Breathe in, breathe out. This is the focus group.
It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
Bueller.
Laugh. And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the focus group with Tim Bennett.
Staunch.
And John Nash.
Keep your clothes looking neat and clean.
We're all business. Except when we're not.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the focus group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. Head over to focusgroupradio.com to find out all about us, including our Tuesday podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. You heard our teaser, which is Breathe In, Breathe Out, which relates to one of our stories in our Caught My Eye segment, which is in the beginning of our program. And then after our break, we've got a Shop Talk segment, which is where we discuss some career and business advice or an article that John and I have found that we think relates to career and business or advertising and marketing, which is where we spent most of our career. And then we finish up with our business birthday, which we've been doing for 13 or 14 years now. And John likes to have give that moniker, we're the only show in the universe that does business birthdays.
Indeed.
So for those of you who are familiar with the show, we've moved that now to the end of the segment since so many of you time shift. We don't do the call-in games anymore, so we've moved the birthday to the back.
One of our listeners, Heather, totally approves of the new show format. I think she likes having business birthday at the end. In fact, it sort of reminded me of one of our favorite shows, which it was not designed for us, but Pee Wee Herman. When Pee Wee's Playhouse came out, you know how many adults made it a Saturday morning ritual to watch Pee Wee and Screen and Conky and Cherry and Miss Yvonne and Tito the lifeguard. I mean, so the show always ended on a good note. So now we end on business birthday, and then he would get on his scooter and take off, right?
My friend, Jay lived in Philly with me. She lived there. We all lived in this loft, and a friend of ours, Brian, and Beth, they would host Bloody Marys Saturdays in the morning, and they would do Bloody Marys, and we'd all watch Pee Wee Herman, and there was the word of the day and all the nonsense that happened with Pee Wee's Playhouse. But it was very much an adult show, as much as it was a kid's show. Probably more so an adult show, I guess, with all the humor. I still laugh at it when I see it, and I still love the Christmas special they used to do every year. I mean, that Pee Wee's Playhouse Christmas special was other than probably Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the gayest thing ever on the holiday season, right?
When Grace Jones is delivered in a box, and she comes out with that metal brassiere thing, the chest plate, and the helmet, and she goes, Pee Wee, I was not supposed to be here. Then she goes, shall I play for... She does the little drummer boy bit. You couldn't... I just screamed with laughter.
Jones is delivered in a
box, wearing a metal breastplate and a helmet. Then you know you're in unforeseen territory, but it's going to be fun, right?
Right. Or Katie Lang is dancing in her country and western garb. Yeah, I mean it's on Tito the soccer player. I mean it goes on and on and on and on, right? Yeah. So, how was your week, Mr. Nash, or your weekend? Did you have a nice? I guess we're in the middle. So
it's you know what we're in the middle of. We're in the middle. We're dead winter. We're in the dead of winter, and I did actually go for a couple walks over the weekend, and I went to a nature preserve up by us, and I was the only one there because it was 10 degrees out. I bundled up, and I'm walking around, and I actually walked into this area where there's no one around except an old house and a stream. And I thought to myself, if something happened to me and I just got collapsed right here, I wonder how long it's going to take before they find the car in the lot, they follow the trail. It's a stupid way of thinking.
Would find you?
Yeah, I'd eventually be found, but there'd probably be like a bunch of rats and a wolf picking at the corpse.
You don't have a lot of good eating, though. Me, just be some good eating. I'm a little more heftier. I'd probably survive. Animals would survive a little longer. They might pick a little bit and move on. Yeah. I watched this thing. I don't know if you ever watched this. There's a college in Georgia, and it's called Berry College, and they have this cam. For the last 3 or 4 years, I used to watch the eagles. They have an eagle cam, and there's a nest of eagles, and they would hatch these little eaglets. And they would feed them, and I'd be fascinated by what they would bring to the nest. It would be some carcasses of something.
A field mouse, a rat.
Piece of a deer, a rat, whatever. One time they brought part of a cat, which was kind of oof. But it's usually squirrels and some sort of coot or fish or something. But the last 3 or 4 years, the chicks have not survived, and so I was watching that this weekend, and lo and behold, again, for the third year now, the chicks have not survived in the nest. Kind of sad, but I used to it was very calming for me to watch this nest, and watch the eagles feed. So now I need to find another nest. Maybe it's my grandmother used to love birds, and so we used to always watch this sort of thing. So for me, this was kind of a soothing thing. But I was kind of upset over the weekend that the eagles no longer have the babies down there in Georgia. So I don't know what to do. I need to find a new nest. If any listeners have a new nest for me to watch, let me know.
I'm glad you brought up birds because I found that I really, really enjoy watching them. We have a bunch of bird feeders around, and there's a lot of cardinals on our property right now. And obviously not obviously, if you know birds, the males are the brightest, and because they're supposed to attract the attention. And I love the little games that they all play around the feeder. Who has the primacy to be up on the ledge? Who's eating the seeds that fell onto the ground? Do they get along? And I just think birds are, and I'll say this, I was back when the weather was milder, I was bike riding one day and I was going on an empty country road, and it must have been, I guess it's a barn swallow, like a little tiny bird.
Right.
Literally flew right next to me, going up and down and up and down, and then it just went ahead of me and cut right in front and flew away. And I just thought to myself, don't tell me that bird was not having fun. And it didn't realize what it was doing. I don't know if it thought it was a game or something, but it was following. And then it was like, look, I can go much faster than you. And zip, went away.
You know what they say about cardinals?
Smart birds?
No, it's a loved one that's passed that's come to see you.
Really?
Let you know things are okay. Yeah.
Well, that was a lot of loved ones hanging out at the feeder.
It could be, could be a loved one coming to let you know things are okay. It's a good thing to think anyway.
All right, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think of a loved one and makes you remind them of somebody like that. So what caught your eye this week, Mr. Nash?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
All right, mine might be a little tiny bit long because I'm going to read directly from the piece, but it came out of the New York Post, and the headline reads, "The Shockingly Dark History of Chippendales."
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I read this. I read it twice, and I put up if you're watching on the video on YouTube, I put up some antique pictures. They're from when Chippendales first came out. I mean, this goes back to the 70s, I think, and the guys have really long hair. Yeah, they have really long hair. And all right, so in the 80s, early 80s, as many as 900 women a night would press into Chippendales Upper East Side Club and chant, "We want meat, we want meat." The oiled, muscled dancers would comply, stripping down on stage before venturing through the audience to kiss customers and accept dollar bills in their G-string pouches. So a podcast hosted and co-produced by a woman named Natalia Petruzella. She has a podcast called Welcome to Your Fantasy, and this dropped one or two Wednesdays ago, and she profiled the dark history of the Chippendales. So, there are stories about the dancers making $300 to $1,500 an encounter for sex from some of the club patrons. A lot of us know that. There's one story she recounts where she says this woman said to one of the Chippendales dancers, "I'll give you 100 for every inch of coke I can snort off your C-K." Off his John, I suppose.
His member.
But all that paled beside what went down between Steve Banerjee and Nick DeNoia. The former launched Chippendales in 1979 in a Los Angeles bar, and that would be Steve Banerjee. And the latter turned it into a global phenomenon. By the 1990s, the business would be plagued by a murder, arson attempts, and an FBI investigation. Did you ever think that with Chippendales, right? No. So Banerjee was an emigre from India and socially awkward, and he stole the idea of men stripping for women from a bar in Redondo Beach and employed it after trying backgammon, dinner theater, and mud wrestling. Those didn't take off, in a bid to keep his own struggling joint afloat. Out of the gate, there were lines around the block. A couple years later, he hired this guy named DeNoia, an Emmy-winning children's television producer, to take the show from beefcake amateur hour to Vegas-worthy extravaganza. The two were like oil and water from the start. They feuded over money and control. DeNoia proposed a deal in which he would launch a New York version of the show and keep half the revenue. But that's not all. Nick wrote on a paper napkin that he had the right to take Chippendales on the road and own it in perpetuity. Former review host Dan Peterson says in the podcast, the one I mentioned earlier, that Steve signed the note, Steve Banerjee, the guy that originally started Chippendales. He signed it and gave away the rights to the most profitable part of the business because he did not know what the word in perpetuity meant.
Oh, stop.
So he didn't know that it meant literally for the rest of time.
Forever
right?
and ever.
So over the next 4 years, the enterprise made millions. Charismatic DeNoia, the producer guy that had him, the original guy, sign this napkin and gave him the rights, received all the acclaim, celebrated on Sally Jassy Raphael, Phil Donahue. Meanwhile, the stuttering Banerjee felt deeply scorned. He was also facing financial stress. Here's one of my favorites. Mounting back taxes, a $70,000 reprint fee due to a Chippendales calendar error. Each month had 31 days. Tell me you could make that up, right? And a lawsuit from DeNoia after Banerjee sent out his own Chippendales touring company. Steve Banerjee decided one day to have Nick killed. Literally, this business partner guy who made him sign the paper napkin, or he didn't understand the terms, he said, I'm going to have him killed. What does he do? Banerjee mistakenly assumes that a Bronx-born friend of his named Ray Colon was mobbed up. He fit the stereotype of a mafia soldier. He was so intense. Colon wasn't that, but he did in fact go out and hire a junkie named Louis to do the deed. In 1987, Louis strolled into DeNoia's Midtown office and shot him in the face. Could you believe this, right?
Sounds like one of our clients.
A police investigation went nowhere. In 1988, DeNoia's family sold his share of Chippendales back to Banerjee, the guy that arranged the hit, for $1.3 million, which was about 10 times less than it was worth at that time. Next, Steve Banerjee, the owner, came up with the idea of killing the competition, which refers to a rival group of men dancers called Adonis, Men of Hollywood. Banerjee hired another amateur hitman named Strawberry. So the two favorite parts are the calendars with 31 days per month and the hitman named Strawberry. Strawberry got cold feet, and he was actually hired by that same guy, the Cologne guy. He got cold feet, and he told the FBI that he'd been hired, and then he turned in Cologne, who then flipped on Banerjee, and then Banerjee was arrested on the murder of DeNoia and, of course, the planned one of the other guy. Before pleading guilty to racketeering, attempted arson, and murder for hire, he transferred his possessions to his wife. They soon divorced, and she sold Chippendales. The night prior to his sentencing, Steve Banerjee killed himself by hanging himself in a prison cell with a bedsheet. Chippendales lives on via tours in Las Vegas, where, pre-pandemic, some 250,000 people saw the show annually. It holds an interesting legacy despite a dark past. So a little bit of a long one, but yeah, dirty play in the world of Chippendales, right? Are you shocked by this?
Well, I'm kind of shocked by it because, I got a lot to say about it, I guess, but I often wonder when these murder for hire plots that you hear about all the time and the greed and all the other nonsense. I often wonder how these people think they're never going to get caught.
Could you imagine? You hired someone to kill someone. You think that person's never going to rat. They're never going to tell. I agree with you.
Particularly when it's so high profile. The Chippendales thing always amazed me, though. You and I, when we did, many years ago, you and I had done some work for Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And we had done the Las Vegas pool party, and we worked with James Vaughn, who, by the way, I don't know if you know, on the sidebar now, he's got a travel company. We can talk about that another time.
But he used to be a Chippendale, one of the only gay Chippendale dancers, right?
Right. And so we had gone and we had watched the show, and I was really disappointed in the show in Vegas because you could see more at the pool party with people walking around just that were guests at the Luxor,
than
you would with the Chippendales. Somebody would come out, and these guys were all very in great shape, and probably most of them were straight or whatever, and the women are all dancing and screaming and yelling at them in the audience. But what I found odd about the whole thing is they would dance and they'd be cowboys or whatever they would, and they would take their shirts off, and that was about it.
That was it.
Right, and right before they whipped their pants off or whatever they had on or their towel, where they would then be in a Speedo or something, the lights would go dark. But that's what you wanted to see, right? You wanted to see the butt and the down below.
I agree.
They never showed anything. They never showed anything below the waist, and not that they were going to be nude, but you never even saw that part. And I thought, what a waste of money this would be to me. I don't know. You saw more at the pool.
Yeah, I just remember. I think we went to the Chippendales with Katie too, and I think Katie was like, "This was a waste of time." Katie was like, I could have, yeah. So there you go. So what caught your eye, sir?
Well, mine is vastly different. So this this might have also been covered in the New York Post. I don't know. The New York Post is quite the paper, by the way.
It's a scandal rag sheet, practically. Yeah.
So the headline here is Massachusetts man swallows his earpods in his sleep. Have you seen this?
He swallowed his AirPods. Well, they could have fallen out easily. I didn't see this at all. This is news to me.
So this caught my eye because in fact, John and I had talked about this. I had the AirPods, and this is the original model. So there's a new one now that stays in your ear supposedly a little better.
The noise
They've got a
canceling
new
ones,
little
yeah.
adapter thing. But the old one for me, my right one would fall out all the time. And one time I was actually using the facility in the bathroom, and it fell out as I flushed the toilet and went shooting down the street. I watched it on the sewer with my Find My iPad app. Saw it going down the drain. So I thought, well, here we go. So this guy was sleeping with his earpods in. He was sleeping to music. And he woke up, and he had trouble breathing, he said. And he couldn't figure out why. He just thought, well, maybe it's just, I'm not feeling well or whatever. And they had a big snowstorm in Massachusetts. So he went out to go shovel the driveway. And he was having trouble breathing, but he thought, well, he was looking for his AirPod, and he couldn't find it. And he only had one of them. But he thought, well, it must be somewhere in the bed, but I'll find it later. So he and his wife and everybody, after he came in from shoveling and he had trouble breathing, he'd come in from shoveling and having trouble, as I said, breathing. So he tried to drink some water. The water wouldn't go down. It was all stuck in his throat. So he had to lean over, and the water was coming out. So couldn't figure out why the water wouldn't go down. So with all this trouble breathing, his wife and then his son jokingly said, well, Dad, I wonder if you swallowed your AirPod. And that's why the water won't go down. Ha, ha, ha. So sure enough, as the breathing and the fact that this obstruction was happening with him, he went to the emergency room. They did an X-ray, and lo and behold, they found the AirPod. And if you're watching on our video feed, you can see that there is the X-ray of the AirPod in there. So the surgeon said he was actually quite lucky, because sometimes the way these things could go in, that they could have got caught in the lung, or could have gone actually in the stomach, and it could have really caused a real problem and actually killed him if it was lodged in there differently. So the doctor did an endoscopy and went in there with a very thin tube and was able to pull out this earpod.
The AirPod.
And thankfully, they said he had minimal discomfort. But and it was, he shortly had a meal afterward, and he was fine. And he said, he thanked the staff. He said the headphone worked fine afterwards. The only thing that didn't work was the microphone function was broken. And the doctor said he was extremely lucky, but they said you probably should not sleep with these things, because as you roll around, if it does fall out of your ear, and it obviously went into his mouth and he had swallowed it, and the doctor said he's quite lucky. It could have turned out to be a lot worse.
A lot worse, yeah.
But so I thought that was kind of funny. I guess. I don't know.
Well, it worked out well. And the thing that I find amusing is that only one part of that didn't work anymore, and that was the microphone thing. So glad he's okay, right?
Yeah. So, yes, that's it. So, hey, many of you know that our friends at Deep Discount are partners here on the Focus Group, and they've got a modern horror sale going on right now, and these are films from 2000 forward. I have to tell you, I'm not a huge fan of the horror genre. Richard is, though. Richard loves it. He was excited. We were looking through this together of certain films, and I had gone through and I picked out a film called Penny Dreadful. And because, John, you know that I like suspense and I like tension, and I'm not the gore kind of guy. I get upset when things are really gory or things are bloody sort of thing. But this was more about suspense and tension, and that kind of make you just kind of make your skin crawl sort of thing with fear, I guess.
I noticed that Mimi Rogers is in this movie.
Yeah, Mimi Rogers is in it. Mickey Jones, Michael Berryman, Rachel Miner. It's only 92 minutes long, which I love. Originally came out in 2006. It's about a woman who's taken on a road trip by her therapist in order to overcome her fear of cars. And then, of course, horror ensues. They encounter a deadly hitchhiker, and then they face the race to stay alive. Many people put this in their top
of horror
top
films
50 of all horror films of all time, just for the tense and the suspense of it. So I saw that and I thought, well, that would be a pretty good one that I probably would like.
But now,
so
Penny Dreadful,
pick it up for $10.90 at during the modern horror sale at Deep Discount.
Penny Dreadful for you. I was surprised to see this film listed in the horror, modern horror section. However, I agree with its listing. It's a sci-fi movie called District 9. And it was directed by Neil Blomkamp, South African film director. And District 9 takes place about 20 years after an alien ship arrives above Johannesburg, just parks above the city. And an alien race named prawns, due to their shrimp-like appearance, live in a area. It's kind of a look at segregation, a whole bunch of other things. And this one detective who is helping to relocate these aliens gets injected with some fluid, and it slowly begins to transform him into one of these aliens, which is kind of gross. Many of you may know or have seen the movie, and Neil Blomkamp, who directed it, went on to direct a movie called Elysium with Jodie Foster about a orbiting paradise space station where everybody lives on Earth in squalor and disease, and if you get up there, you're going to live forever. Didn't do too well. This did very well, though. But it's called District 9. And it does qualify not just as sci-fi, but as modern horror, at least in my opinion. And then the new release this week, I think, was amusing because you know this gentleman, and it would be the very excellent Mr. Dundee. And Tim did work with the man who portrayed Crocodile Dundee, which would be Paul Hogan back in your Subaru days, right?
Yeah, Paul Hogan. So this is the very excellent Mr. Dundee released this week. And it's about, everybody knows Crocodile Dundee and the characters that he played in the Australian outback. And when I worked at Subaru, Paul Hogan was credited with really putting Subaru back on the map with representing the Outback brand of products that Subaru had, the Outback models of products. And this movie is about beyond homesickness for Australia, the 80s celeb Paul Hogan, playing a fictionalized version of himself, is pretty much used to his quiet retirement in L.A. However, his angry granddaughter's insistence that he accept the knighthood he declined and pushy producers gets him to go back to Australia. And, of course, I'm sure he probably reprises his role. John Cleese is in it, Chevy Chase, Olivia Newton-John. I'm sure probably back to what we're used to with Paul Hogan.
Exactly. It's going to be more of the Crocodile Dundee antics. So head over to focusgroupradio.com, click on the deep discount logo, which is a shark called Sharky. Arr, the shark. And begin your shopping experience. It's the modern horror sale. And Tim picked Penny Dreadful. I'll run through these quickly again. I picked District 9, and the new release is the very excellent Mr. Dundee, referring, of course, to Crocodile Dundee. So stay with us. We're going to take a really quick break, and when we return, we have a shop talk about the perils of social media coming up, and at the end of the show, we have our universally well-loved and regarded business birthday, the only in the universe. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. The Focus Group, an entertaining look at the outside of business. For your convenience, listen anytime, anywhere, anyway, anyhow, and on anything. Got it? Head over to focusgroupradio.com and pick your poison. We're all business, except when we're not.
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. Head over to focusgroupradio.com to learn more about us and also find all of our media there. That's where it's housed, including our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. So later on in the show here, as we promised, we've got Shop Talk and then our business birthday. Before we do that, we're going to take care of a little business we spoke of on a last week's show regarding the Super Bowl and an advertisement with Jeep, which featured Bruce Springsteen. And there's been some news lately about allegedly Bruce Springsteen may have received a DUI or drinking under the influence or whatever your state calls it. In a New Jersey park, supposedly some police officers observed him taking a shot of tequila with some fans. But the bigger issue, and the question I would ask you, John, is if you were the head of Jeep that just spent upwards of $20 million just to buy the airtime on the Super Bowl, because it was $5.5 million for a 30-second spot, and they did a two-minute commercial, plus whatever it cost to produce and make the commercial, which was probably well over $1 million, plus whatever you pay Bruce Springsteen. So they immediately pulled the commercial from TV. So because of what this alleged incident with Springsteen. So if you're the head of marketing at Jeep and you've just invested all this money they immediately pulled the commercial. What would you have done if you were the head of marketing? Would you have pulled the commercial, or how would you have handled that?
So first, I would have found an empty space, room, or trailer to cry in. Because you've pulled off this thing where you get Bruce Springsteen to do his first TV commercial ever, right? And it's for Jeep, and it's this really incredible thing about being in the middle, not being on left or right, the whole sides thing because of the political backdrop. And you're excited, you're thrilled, it airs, it gets great reviews, and then suddenly, boom, the boss is sidelined with a DUI, which doesn't even compute because that's never happened in Bruce Springsteen's career ever. Am I not mistaken about that?
Right.
So now you probably have the CEO, you probably have the head of communications, you probably have a whole bunch of people knocking on your door. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are we going to do? What are you going to do? What are we going to do, Tim?
Kill your sister.
Yeah. And
Ba-dum-bump.
yeah, that's a total ba-dum-bum. I think they made a decision. I think they fell on the line of, okay, we can never be a manufacturer of automobiles and endorse any type of drinking and driving. So they probably held the decision right at that point. Because if you start parsing and sorting and saying law enforcement has some inconsistent stories, Bruce's lawyer is saying one thing, the cops are saying something else, there may be a political overtone, it gets into the mud and it starts making the spot literally be about sides, which it was, but not about sides in the way they wanted it to be. So I guess you would pull it, but you would do so with a huge amount of regret and egg on your face because you're talking multi-million-dollar effort. Not just the Bruce part, as Tim outlined, but Tim and I used to talk about this all the time. In the auto world, you don't shoot a commercial for less than $900,000 that involves a car or a street or a road or people, right?
Right. And it's the perils of using celebrity in advertisements as well. I mean, there's always a morals clause, but as you noted, Bruce Springsteen is beyond just using celebrity. It was somebody who's never done an ad before. They'd been trying to get him for 10 years. He's never endorsed a product, quote unquote. And so that there's that issue alone. But even when we had used in my day when we used Martina Navratilova and Lance Armstrong, both, which could be controversial figures in their own, right?
Yep.
There was always the chance of maybe they would say something, maybe they would behave in a certain way, maybe they would do something that would offend a potential consumer or whatever, and you have to be prepared for it. And so I don't know what you do in these sort of situations, but I'm not so sure I would have been quick to have pulled the spot. I mean, it almost felt as if he was guilty until proven innocent in this case.
I was just going to say, pulling the spot literally did, whether they did it for safety or they don't want the brand associated with anything to do with drinking and driving, it sort of cemented the story, though, right? By pulling it, they're saying, now you have to prove you didn't do anything and we'll air it again.
Yeah. And I think it tarnished the spot because now if you go put it back on, it's going to be like, I don't know. It's a tough one. But you and I have been reading the story, and a number of people had sent it to us, and so that's why we wanted to address it. But even in reading the story, you and I were just confused about, well, what happened? There just doesn't seem to be a clear. He was driving a Jeep. He was driving a motorcycle. He took a shot. He didn't take a shot. He was asked to walk 18 steps. He walked
25
steps.
Yeah, something, whatever. Yeah.
There was just someone says it was politically motivated. It wasn't politically motivated. I mean, I don't know. These sort of things to me, I never understand what and first of all, why it took so long for it to come out. It supposedly happened in November.
And there we go again with, if it happened in November, why didn't we hear about it in November? And that would have given them a lot of time to either re-edit, reshoot, or do a different thing, or you know what I mean, or hold it. Who knows, right?
Yeah, it was three months ago. 3 months ago. So there you have it. But so John and I both would have probably handled it differently then, right, John?
Mm-hmm. Much differently.
Which is why we're on the radio. So John had found this story from Inc. magazine, and quite frankly, I read it and I was scared It was scary for me, I guess, when I initially read it. And then when I read it again, I kind of cocked my head, and there was some thoughts I had along the way. So we'll share it with you.
You did what I did then. I read it. I was scared. I read it again. I'm like, okay, there's a couple things here.
Right. There was ways to handle it. So the headline is Internet Trolls Cost This Founder Her Business and Her Home. Here's how to protect yourself. So essentially, this is a story about a woman named Sarah Christensen. And a couple of years ago, she said she has a successful company. She was looking to hire a marketing manager. And we all talk about this, where companies now will look at your social media.
They'll mine it.
And they're going to look and see what you're doing online. And we always tell people, do not put stuff online that you think is going to be controversial, or particularly if you're out in job hunting or at any time, quite frankly. And we've probably all made the mistakes or said something that maybe you shouldn't have online. But in this case, this woman, Sarah Christensen, is out looking for a marketing manager. She ends up asking a couple of the applicants to send them links to their social media pages. And this one woman sends a link to, I believe it was Instagram.
Yeah, it was Instagram.
And the one picture had the woman standing by a pool in a very revealing bikini. And so the employer crops the picture, takes the woman's head off the bikini. The woman's name was Chloe, I think was her last name, Emily Chloe. So the employer crops the picture with her head and posts it and says, oh, by the way, PSA announcement, if you're looking for a job and the employer asks you for social media links, make sure you're aware of what you're posting and don't send pictures like this. I'm looking for a professional marketer, not a bikini model. And then obviously the applicant sees this and asks her to take it down. And then, John, you can take it from there as to what ensues.
Well, before that, the article poses the question, was this a bad idea? Because Christensen, the woman who owns this company, the successful business, and she's looking for the marketing director, my intent, she says, was to communicate to new employees that employers do look at your social media, but obviously that was not how it landed in the world. So when the article says, was it a bad idea, this is on the second reading, this is where I said to myself, you bet it was a bad idea. And the concept...
So maybe I read that wrong. So was this a bad idea, meaning what? Was it a bad idea for Christensen to post this of the applicant?
Yes, to take the photo, crop the head off, and pose the question to her followers, is this how you want to be seen in the professional world? So Chloe... Basically, what she did is she took the reposted image that Christensen had done and had posed that question of, would you please be aware that people are going to look at your social media? And she puts on Twitter this image and she says, I was objectified earlier today by a company because of a picture of me in a bikini. That tweet gathered a little attention, Christensen says. Then at She Rates Dogs, which is some handle of a user which has over 500,000 followers, retweeted it, and Chloe's complaint went viral. Some blogs picked it up, and then it went bigger, Christensen says. Then the mainstream media picked it up, and then it was this out-of-control inferno. Over the next couple of days, the internet mob attacked Christensen every way it could. Every asset I had for my business was destroyed, she says. My podcast had thousands of bad reviews. Anything I had online was just inundated. My clients were also attacked and told in no uncertain terms that they needed to not do business with me anymore. The mob also flooded Facebook and other social media with complaints that Christensen had violated their terms of service, which resulted in all her accounts being shut down. Then it goes to the next, like DEFCON 5, right? Death threats poured in, not just to Christensen, but also to her clients. Unsurprisingly, they all left her. And then the next level above that, now we're at like, I don't know, the military command's getting ready to hit the nuclear button. Then she was doxxed, which means her home address and other personal information was published online. She began receiving death threats at home. I had an 8-page handwritten letter sent to my house telling her in great detail how they're going to kill me and my family and cut my dog's head off. Badly rattled, Christensen called in law enforcement. The FBI said that in these circumstances, most of the credible threats are from people who are highly practiced and can make themselves anonymous, so the FBI generally can't find them before something happens. Fearing for their lives, Christensen and her family sold their house. We lived all sorts of random places for more than 6 months, trying to run away from the doxing and the death threats. Now, more than a year later, they have a home again, but very few people know where. I kind of live underground. I don't tell my neighbors what my name is. I have to fiercely protect our physical safety because it's still an issue. Christensen says she's still radioactive and couldn't get a job at Starbucks, but after a year of trauma, she's gone public, at least professionally, as a speaker and consultant, sharing what she's learned, warning business owners that the same thing could happen to them, and teaching them how to protect themselves. Here's her advice. Now, before we go into the advice, and I would just ask you this question as well. It all starts with a bad decision, right? And I have personally, I'm just going to say this personally, I have a hate-hate relationship with social media. I love seeing what people are doing. I love the birthday aspect, and I like connecting with old friends. So maybe it's not a love-hate or a hate-hate, but there's a lot of who we are on social media is not who we are in the real world. I would say that to be the truth. And a lot of people invest a lot of time and energy into the social platforms as if they were tangible, physical, real things, like going to the store, seeing a friend for coffee, whatever. And so did the reaction of this, this thing getting picked up by someone with 500,000 users and it goes explosive, did it surprise me? No. Everybody looks for lightning in a bottle. They want this to happen, but not in this way. So I just think you have to be very cautious about what you put up, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I wondered, so this reminded me a little bit of what's happened to these people recently that stormed the Capitol. Yeah. So a lot of them that were in businesses, they've been ruined because they stormed the Capitol. And then whether there was a woman in Texas who owned a flower shop, there was a guy in Chicago that had a successful research firm. They've gotten bad reviews. Their companies have lost clients. I mean, their businesses have essentially been folded because of what they did. This is a different situation, but I thought exactly what you said earlier, and then now that I see what you said, why she just didn't counsel. If she really felt that it was a bad idea for this woman to have posted the picture, or she sent the link of her in the bikini, maybe she should have just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Emily, I think you're very qualified to interview for the job, but can I give you a word of advice? When you are out marketing yourself, maybe use a different name, or perhaps you just, probably shouldn't show a picture like that. People may take it the wrong way. I certainly don't. I understand, blah, blah, or however you would do it. I've had to do it with my nieces to say, you need to be careful about what kind of pictures you post if you're out looking for a job or you're a teacher or whatever you do. I've all had to do it. I had a friend of mine from college had posted a picture of me from the fraternity, and he and I had one too many drinks. And he had posted a picture of us. And, we were 20 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I immediately sent him a note and said, "Dan, not cool." And he immediately got back to me and said, "Yeah, you're right." He said, "You're right. I'm sorry." Because I thought it was funny. He said, "You could send it to me. And I think it's a funny picture, but not for 10,000 people to see."
Yeah. And
a funny picture.
So, as I said earlier about I just think the decision to take someone's picture who is a candidate for a position in your company and to crop it and then post it, even the cropping is not going to eliminate the fact that you've made a decision to use someone else's photography without their permission, and you got it from their social account, and the circumstances of her being photographed in a bikini are completely her own. She could be by a pool, a beautiful woman in a bikini. A guy could be in a bathing suit. I mean, so I still think it, so Christensen, the woman who was affected by this, had 4 or 5 steps to take to protect herself. And the first thing she says is, don't assume it can't happen to you, even if your social media is completely inoffensive. I have issue with this right off the bat. She might have thought what she was doing it was inoffensive and helping others to prepare for a job interview or to recognize that, in fact, people and companies can look at your social media feed. But it was offensive to the candidate who realized that she used her image, right?
Right.
And did it in a way that was kind of snarky, and the candidate didn't even have the benefit of a private conversation for the woman saying, I love your credentials and stuff, but I really don't know about some of the social. I'm getting at, like, there was just no dialogue. She just used the image. So I take that with a grain of salt, but if you're putting up pictures of flowers and birds and dogs and trees and cats, I guarantee you're safe. Unless someone doesn't, I had to eat last night. Unless someone doesn't like a dog, a tree, or a cat, right? What's the other one that she had?
The second thing she said, have a plan. And I initially thought this seemed like overkill. So she said, have a plan. Businesses need to have a plan for this, because when you're in it and you have no plan, you cannot respond in a thoughtful way, especially if the lives of you and your family are being threatened, she says. Your plan should include lining up PR and legal services with experience in this area because of the complexities involved. You need reputation management and physical security. I thought this was a little crazy. What I didn't understand about this
and expensive.
Is, right, if you're a small agency, for instance, I thought you and I have Triberry Productions. We're an ad agency, marketing agency. We don't have a plan for this. I think we're smart enough as to how we post things and how we manage ourselves. But we don't have a reputation management and physical security firm ready to go, do we?
Well, no, because what we're talking about here and on Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, is often stories that are coming directly to us from the world of marketing, advertising, and career and resume stuff and consumer culture. And so you can have an opinion about some of this stuff, but we're not doing what I said earlier. We're not taking a job candidate's image from their social media feed, which they provided to you because you asked for it for a job situation, and then you've cropped a photo, put a warning label on it saying, don't do this if you're doing a marketing job because I'm not hiring a bikini model, and then you throw it out into the universe and look what comes back. So I think what we're reading when she says have a plan is the slingshot effect of, oh my God, the worst in the world happened to her for sure, and now this is getting dealt with this way. This next one is just sensible for anything. Keep your home address and personal information private. As far as you can do that, good luck, because you and I have actually sometimes Tim and I will sit down and say, I wonder what happened to so-and-so. Maybe it's someone we grew up with.
Right.
I will tell you that it's fairly an amazing thing that you could find out where you could find a lot out, even without your information being made available via your social media feeds. So that one, I'm just like, okay, that's just sensible to not put it out there. So it's obviously findable, but it's findable, right?
Yeah, the one thing I did question here, though, there was one thing where she says, when you go to the dentist, they don't need to know your home address.
They do.
But a lot of times with insurance, they will ask, are you still at blank, blank, blank? So I thought that was a little bit odd. The number 4 was rethink your dependence on social media. And, she had said that a lot of her work was done around social media and she relied on social media. I think that's an issue if you do think that so much of your business is going to rely on that. And I know a lot of people do, but I think you need to have a more robust campaign and not just think you're going to rely on one form of social media, because if it does go out or you do get removed from the platform, you're going to be in trouble. My thought about this whole thing, though, regarding this rethink your dependence on social media, when she started talking about her accounts being hijacked and people sending her DMs and people giving her bad reviews on Instagram or accounts, why didn't she just shut them off?
Close them down, yeah. But it loops back to what you said, that she viewed her leads and the value of her business and what she was doing was happening through the social media stuff. And Tim and I will agree with this. We had a conversation just a week ago about Facebook and about something they changed on the platform. You do not own anything. The minute you put it on Facebook, you are giving the platform free and clear use of that material, and they can change it. They can change its display. They can do whatever they like. So I think you're right. In a nutshell, the reliance should not be on that as a business platform. It's a useful thing, right? But and at the very end, she just says, decide what your public positions will be. Should your company comment on political issues, etc. That's something that plagues any company, large and small. It's discussed, it's talked about, and I would often point out to clients that neutral was a nice, safe place to be. Unless, of course, you were making a statement by changing hiring policies for LGBT individuals to allow for partner benefits and stuff like that. And that's sometimes an important thing for a company to put a stake in the sand and say, we believe in our employees. But broader politics, Tim taught me a lesson a long time ago. Many companies devote to both candidates equal amounts because you never know who's going to win. But that's about as far as they go, right?
Right, because you're not going to change anybody's mind. It's like having the discussion about abortion. Whether you believe in a woman's right to choose or not, you're not going to change anybody's mind. So it's not worth getting in a fight about. in taking a position in many cases.
So be careful online.
Yes. Our business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So our business birthday today comes to us on February 17th, born February 17th in 1917, is Guillermo González Camarena. So it's February 17th, 1918. I get all the dates screwed up with my dyslexia. He was a Mexican electrical engineer who was the inventor of the color wheel type of color television. He also introduced color television to the world. He was born in Guadalajara, Mexico. He invented the chromoscopic adapter for television equipment, which was an early color television transmission system. He applied for U.S. patent in his late teens, early 20s, and he finally, in 1941, was able to obtain the patent for color TV. He said his invention related to the transmission and reception of colored pictures or images by wire or wireless. His invention was designed to make it easy to adapt black and white television equipment. And he had sold his first set in 1954 for $1,450 for color TV.
So we have Guillermo to blame for taking us from the world of black and white. We had to imagine what things look like, because I grew up with a black and white until my grandmother willed us her color television.
Yeah. He said he also filed for additional patents for color television in 1960 and 1962. The very first color transmission of television in the lab was in Mexico City. And he had also obtained authorization to make the first publicly announced color broadcast in Mexico in 1963. He sadly died in a car accident in Pueblo on April 18th in 1965 at the age of 48 while he was inspecting a television transmitter in Veracruz. But I never knew who he was. It was funny. I was going through the list and I saw his name as the inventor of color TV.
The actual color.
Pretty cool.
It is very cool. And I love when these kinds of business birthdays come up, because this is a technology that transformed what was there, being black and white, and made it something spectacular color. And here we all are, glued to our TV. So thank you, Guillermo, and thank you, Business Birthday Tim. And thank you all for joining us today. Remember to subscribe, like, and rate the Focus Group, and check out TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, available on Tuesdays. But also, everything's always at focusgroupradio.com. And a big thanks to Deep Discount. Check out their modern horror sale. Go to our site, focusgroupradio.com, click on their logo, and begin your shopping journey. So everybody, stay safe, have a great week, and we'll see you in the new one.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.